Growing up as the son of the renowned lawyer Alexander Williams was both a blessing and a curse. My father was a towering figure, a man of immense influence and authority, both in the courtroom and at home. From an early age, I felt the heavy weight of his expectations pressing down on me. It wasn't just that he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. He demanded it. The law was his life, and he couldn't fathom a different path for his only son. My own dreams, however, lay far from the courtroom. I loved the kitchen. The smells, the sounds, the thrill of creating something from nothing. I spent countless hours watching cooking shows, experimenting with recipes, and imagining my own restaurant. The kitchen was my sanctuary, a place where I could express myself freely. But in the Williams household, such dreams were considered frivolous at best. My father saw them as a distraction from my true purpose. "Samuel," my father would say, his voice firm and unyielding, "you're going to be a great lawyer one day, just like me. The world needs more people who can stand up for justice, not chefs wasting their talents on fancy dishes." "But Dad," I would protest, my voice tinged with desperation. "I love cooking. It's my passion. I don't want to be a lawyer." He would shake his head, his expression one of disappointment. "Cooking is a hobby, Samuel, not a career. You have a gift for the law, and it's your duty to use it. This is not up for debate." My mother, Emily, was the only one who understood my struggle. She was a gentle soul, always offering a kind word and a comforting presence. In the evenings, after my father had retired to his study, she would sit with me in the kitchen, watching as I prepared dinner. "You know, Samuel," she said one night as I chopped vegetables, "your father means well. He just wants the best for you." "I know, Mom," I replied, my hands moving rhythmically as I diced an onion. "But it doesn't feel like he's listening to me. He doesn't understand how much this means to me." She sighed, reaching out to touch my arm. "He's set in his ways, but he loves you. Just be patient. Maybe one day he'll see things differently." But patience was hard to come by when every day felt like a battle against an invisible enemy. High school was a blur of extracurricular activities designed to bolster my law school application. Debate club, mock trials, internships at my father's firm. There was no room for anything else. My dreams were pushed further and further into the background, buried under a mountain of expectations. One evening, shortly before my high school graduation, I found myself alone in the kitchen, the smell of freshly baked bread filling the air. I was lost in thought, imagining the menu for my dream restaurant, when my father walked in. "Samuel, we need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I turned to face him, wiping my hands on a towel. "What is it, Dad?" He held out a letter, his expression serious. "This came today. It's from Harvard Law School. You've been accepted." My heart sank. I had applied to Harvard because it was expected of me, not because I wanted to go. I took the letter, the weight of it heavy in my hands. "Congratulations, son," he said, a rare smile crossing his face. "This is the first step towards a brilliant career." "But what if I don't want that career?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His smile faded, replaced by a look of stern disapproval. "We've been over this, Samuel. You're going to be a lawyer. This is what you've been working towards your entire life." "No, Dad," I said, my frustration boiling over. "This is what you've been working towards. I've been dreaming of something else entirely." The room fell silent, the tension thick in the air. My father stared at me, his eyes hard and unyielding. "You will go to Harvard, and you will become a lawyer. End of discussion." With that, he turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, the acceptance letter crumpled in my hand. I felt a mix of anger and helplessness, my dreams slipping further out of reach. My father's expectations were a heavy burden, one I wasn't sure I could carry much longer. As I stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of bread no longer comforting, I vowed to myself that one day I would break free. One day, I would follow my own path, no matter the cost. But for now, I was trapped, a prisoner of my father's dreams. Law school was everything I had feared and nothing I had hoped for. The hallowed halls of Harvard, revered by so many, felt like a prison to me. Each lecture on torts and contracts, each case study, and each moot court session was a reminder of the dreams I had left behind. Despite my lack of enthusiasm, I excelled in my studies. It was easier to focus on the work than to confront the emotional turmoil inside me. The first day of classes was a blur of introductions and syllabi. As I sat in my first lecture, I glanced around the room at my peers, bright, eager faces ready to embark on a legal career. I felt like an imposter among them, my heart still yearning for the kitchen. After class, I headed to the campus cafe, hoping a cup of coffee would lift my spirits. As I stood in line, a voice behind me said, "Hey, you're Samuel Williams, right? The lawyer's son." I turned to see a tall, lanky guy with glasses and a friendly smile. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "I'm Mark," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about your father. He's kind of a legend around here." "Yeah, he is," I said, shaking his hand. "So what brings you to law school?" "Family tradition," Mark replied with a chuckle. "My dad's a judge, my mom's a prosecutor. I guess it runs in the blood." "Same here," I said, unable to hide the bitterness in my voice. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Not a fan of the law?" "Not exactly," I admitted. "I'd rather be running a restaurant." He laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh that made me smile despite myself. "That's a first. Most people here are obsessed with becoming the next big-shot lawyer." "Yeah, well, I'm not most people," I said, feeling a bit more at ease. As the weeks went by, Mark and I became friends. He was easygoing and had a knack for making the heavy workload seem more manageable. We spent long nights in the library, poring over casebooks and sharing our frustrations. One evening, as we took a break outside, Mark asked, "So, why don't you just leave and start that restaurant you dream about?" "It's not that simple," I said, staring at the stars. "My father would never forgive me. He has his whole life planned out for me." Mark nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes it feels like we're living someone else's dream, huh?" "Exactly," I said, grateful for his empathy. Despite my friendship with Mark, law school was a constant struggle. Each assignment felt like a chore, each lecture a reminder of the path I was forced to take. I found solace in the kitchen, cooking for my friends in our shared apartment. It was the one place where I felt truly myself, freed from the weight of expectations. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Mark walked into the kitchen. "That smells amazing," he said, inhaling deeply. "You really do have a talent for this." "Thanks," I said, smiling as I chopped vegetables. "It's the only thing that keeps me sane." "Have you ever thought about telling your father how you feel?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Many times," I replied, sighing. "But every time I try, he just shuts me down. He's so convinced that being a lawyer is the only way to succeed." "Maybe he just needs to see how passionate you are about cooking," Mark suggested. "I mean, it's obvious to anyone who tastes your food." I shook my head. "He's set in his ways. But maybe one day he'll understand." As the end of the first semester approached, I found myself dreading the return home for winter break. My father would expect glowing reports of my progress and reaffirmation of my commitment to the law. The thought of disappointing him weighed heavily on me. One evening, as I packed my bags, my mother called. "Hi, Samuel. How are you holding up?" "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm fine. Just getting ready to come home." "I can't wait to see you," she said warmly. "Your father is so proud of you, you know. He tells everyone about his son at Harvard." "Yeah, I know," I replied, my heart sinking. "I'll see you soon." As I hung up, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. My mother's gentle support contrasted sharply with my father's unyielding expectations. I wished she could see how much I was struggling. But I didn't want to burden her. Winter break was as tense as I had anticipated. My father bombarded me with questions about my classes, my professors, and my plans for the future. I answered mechanically, my mind drifting to thoughts of new recipes and restaurant concepts. One evening, as we sat in the living room, my father said, "Samuel, I'm thinking you should intern at my firm this summer. It would be a great experience for you." "Dad, I was thinking of doing something different," I said cautiously. "Maybe work in a restaurant, get some hands-on experience." His expression darkened. "We've discussed this, Samuel. Your future is in the law, not in some kitchen." "But what if that's not what I want?" I asked, my voice rising. "It's not about what you want," he snapped. "It's about what's best for you." I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. Maybe I should be the one to decide that. The room fell silent, my father's eyes blazing with anger. My mother looked between us, her face pale. "Samuel, please," she said softly. "Let's not fight." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. "I'm sorry, Mom. I need to think about my future." With that, I left the room, the weight of my father's expectations still heavy on my shoulders. As I lay in bed that night, I vowed to myself that one day I would find a way to pursue my dreams. But for now, I was stuck in a life that wasn't my own, struggling to find a balance between duty and desire. Graduation day at Harvard Law School was a momentous occasion. My classmates beamed with pride, their futures in the legal world bright and full of promise. I should have felt the same sense of accomplishment, but as I stood there in my cap and gown, clutching my diploma, all I felt was a sense of relief that it was over. The ceremony was a blur, the speeches and applause a distant hum, as I struggled to suppress the turmoil inside me. After the ceremony, my father found me in the crowd. His face was a mixture of pride and expectation. "Congratulations, Samuel," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Dad," I replied, trying to match his enthusiasm. "I'm glad it's over." "Over? No, my boy. This is just the beginning," he said, his eyes shining. "Now we can focus on your future at the firm. I have big plans for you." My heart sank. This was the moment I had been dreading, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the nervousness gnawing at me. He looked puzzled but nodded. "Of course, let's find a quiet spot." We walked away from the throngs of graduates and their families, finding a secluded bench under a tree. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Dad, I appreciate everything you've done for me. Harvard, the support, the opportunities. But there's something you need to know." He frowned, concern creasing his brow. "What is it, Samuel?" "I don't want to be a lawyer," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I've never wanted to be a lawyer. My passion has always been cooking. I want to open a restaurant, not work in a law firm." For a moment, he just stared at me, stunned. "Samuel, this isn't funny. You've worked so hard to get here." "I worked hard because I had to," I said, my voice firm. "Not because I wanted to. My heart isn't in the law, Dad. It's in the kitchen." He shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. "This is just a phase. You'll see. Once you start working at the firm, you'll understand the importance of what we do." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "No, Dad, this isn't a phase. This is who I am. I can't spend my life doing something I don't love. I want to open a restaurant, and I'm going to." His expression shifted from disbelief to anger. "You're throwing away a brilliant career. All the sacrifices we've made for you, and you want to be a cook." "Not just a cook, Dad," I said, meeting his gaze. "A restaurateur. I want to create something of my own, something that brings people joy. I need to follow my own path." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Finally, he spoke, his voice cold and distant. "If that's your decision, then you're on your own. Don't expect any support from me." The words stung, but I had expected them. I understand, but I need to do this. With that, I turned and walked away, the weight of his disapproval heavy on my shoulders. It hurt to leave things like this, but I knew I couldn't live my life for someone else, even if that someone was my father. Back at my apartment, I found Mark waiting. "Hey, how'd it go?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "About as well as expected," I said, dropping onto the couch. "He doesn't understand. He thinks I'm throwing everything away." Mark sat down next to me. "Well, screw him. You need to do what makes you happy. You only get one life, right?" "Right," I said, grateful for his support. "I'm going to need all the help I can get." "Hey, you've got me," Mark said with a grin. "And I know a thing or two about starting from scratch. We'll figure it out." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. With Mark's help, I found a small space in the city to lease for my restaurant. It was a far cry from the grand vision I had, but it was a start. Every day was filled with meetings, tastings, and endless to-do lists, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. One evening, as we were setting up the kitchen, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Samuel, your father told me everything," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, Mom," I replied. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She sighed, but there was a note of resignation in her voice. "I just want you to be happy. Your father will come around eventually. Just give him time." "Thanks, Mom," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude. "I love you." "I love you too, Samuel," she said. "Take care of yourself." As I hung up, I felt a sense of peace. I was finally following my own path, and despite the challenges ahead, I knew I was doing the right thing. The grand opening of my restaurant was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. Friends, family, and curious locals filled the space, their excitement palpable. My father didn't come, but my mother did, her eyes shining with pride. As I stood in the kitchen, watching my dream come to life, I knew I had made the right choice. I was finally free, living the life I had always wanted. After the guests had left and the kitchen was cleaned, Mark and I sat down with a bottle of wine. "To Samuel's first restaurant," he said, raising his glass. "To breaking free," I replied, clinking my glass with his. As I took a sip, I felt a sense of satisfaction and hope. This was just the beginning of my journey, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. Opening the restaurant was only the beginning. The real work started after the grand opening night. My little bistro, named Sam's Place, was a cozy, intimate space with a warm ambience. The walls were adorned with vintage cooking utensils and black and white photos of famous chefs, a tribute to the culinary world I admired. Every detail, from the rustic wooden tables to the carefully curated menu, reflected my passion for cooking. Each day began before dawn and ended long after midnight. I juggled multiple roles: head chef, manager, and even janitor. Mark was a constant presence, his infectious enthusiasm and unwavering support keeping me grounded. Despite the exhaustion, I thrived on the energy and chaos of the kitchen. It was my domain, where I felt most alive. One morning, as I was preparing for the lunch rush, Mark walked in, a newspaper in hand. "Look at this," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "We got a review in the local paper." I wiped my hands on my apron and took the newspaper. The headline read, "Sam's Place, a culinary gem in the heart of the city." My heart raced as I skimmed the article. Chef Samuel Williams brings a unique blend of passion and creativity to his new restaurant, offering a dining experience that is both comforting and innovative. His dishes, a harmonious fusion of flavors, are a testament to his talent and dedication. I read aloud, my voice trembling with excitement. "That's amazing," Mark exclaimed, clapping me on the back. "This is just the beginning, Sam. People are going to love this place." "I hope so," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. "But we can't let up now. We've got to keep pushing, keep improving. Mark nodded. Absolutely. Let's make today even better than yesterday. The positive review brought a surge of customers, and the next few weeks were a blur of activity. Every day, the dining room buzzed with the chatter of satisfied diners, and the kitchen was a symphony of clanging pots, sizzling pans, and shouted orders. I lived for those moments of controlled chaos, where every dish that left the kitchen was a piece of art, crafted with love and precision. One evening, as we were closing up, my mother stopped by. She looked around, taking in the bustling atmosphere, the smiling faces of the staff, and the satisfied customers lingering over their desserts. "Samuel, this place is wonderful," she said, her voice filled with pride. "Thanks, Mom," I said, hugging her tightly. "It means a lot to me that you're here." She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "Your father would be proud of you, too, you know. He just needs time to understand." I sighed, the mention of my father still a sore spot. "I hope so. But for now, I'm just focused on making this place the best it can be." "And you're doing a fantastic job," she said, her voice firm. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The days turned into weeks, and Sam's place continued to grow. We experimented with new dishes, hosted themed nights, and even started a weekend brunch that quickly became a local favorite. I hired a small team of dedicated chefs and servers, each one as passionate about food as I was. One night, after a particularly busy service, I sat down with my head chef, Maria. She was a talented cook with a no-nonsense attitude, and her culinary skills were unmatched. "Maria, I don't know what I'd do without you," I said, raising my glass of wine. She laughed, a hearty, infectious sound. "You be just fine, Sam, but it's nice to be appreciated." "We make a great team," I said, clinking my glass with hers. "And I've been thinking, what if we expanded? Maybe open another location?" Maria raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious, aren't we? But I like the way you think. We have something special here. It could work." "I think so too," I said, excitement bubbling up inside me. "We'll need to find the right place, hire the right people, but I believe we can do it." "We'll need investors," Maria pointed out, her practical side kicking in. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "But with the reputation we're building, I think we can find them." As we talked late into the night, brainstorming ideas and dreaming big, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was what I was meant to do. The kitchen was my canvas, and every dish was a work of art. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected call. It was from an investor who had dined at Sam's place and was impressed by what he saw. "Mr. Williams," he said, "I'd like to discuss the possibility of expanding your restaurant. I believe we can help each other." The meeting was set for the following week, and I spent every spare moment preparing. When the day arrived, Mark and I sat down with the investor, a sharp-dressed man named Richard. "Samuel, your restaurant is a breath of fresh air," Richard said, his tone warm and sincere. "I've seen a lot of potential in your work, and I think we can take this to the next level." "Thank you, Richard," I said, trying to keep my excitement in check. "I have big plans for Sam's place, and with the right support, I believe we can achieve them." Richard nodded. "I'm willing to invest in your vision, but I'll need to see a detailed business plan and projections for the new location." "We've been working on that," Mark chimed in, handing over a folder. "This outlines our plans, costs, and expected returns." Richard reviewed the documents, nodding occasionally. "This looks solid. I like your vision and your attention to detail. Let's make this happen." As we shook hands, sealing the deal, I felt a surge of gratitude and determination. This was it, the chance to turn my dream into a reality on a larger scale. The next few months would be crucial, but I was ready for the challenge. That evening, as I stood in the kitchen of Sam's place, watching my team work with precision and passion, I knew we were on the right path. We were building something special, something that brought people joy and satisfaction. and I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take us next. The expansion of Sam's place was a whirlwind of excitement and stress. Our new location, in a bustling part of the city, promised even greater success. With Richard's investment and a dedicated team, everything seemed to be falling into place. Yet, as the opening day approached, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Running multiple restaurants was far more demanding than I had anticipated. I found myself constantly juggling menus, staff issues, and financial reports. My days were a blur of meetings and tastings, and my nights were filled with endless planning. The pressure to succeed was immense, and it was beginning to take a toll. One evening, as I was reviewing some paperwork in my office, Maria knocked on the door and entered. "Sam, you need to take a break," she said, her tone firm but caring. "You've been here since dawn." I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of exhaustion. "I can't, Maria. There's just too much to do. The new place needs everything to be perfect." "Perfection is overrated," she replied, crossing her arms. "Your health is more important. What good will you be to the restaurant if you collapse from exhaustion?" "I know," I sighed. "But there's so much riding on this. We can't afford to fail." She sat down across from me, her expression softening. "We won't fail. We've got a great team, and everyone is committed to making this work. But you need to trust us and delegate more. You're not in this alone, Sam." Her words hit home, and I realized she was right. I had been trying to control everything, afraid to let go. "You're right, Maria. I want this so badly. It's hard to let go." "I understand," she said gently. "But you need to take care of yourself too. Promise me you'll take a break." "I promise," I said, smiling faintly. "Thanks, Maria." As I started to delegate more responsibilities, I began to notice a difference. The weight on my shoulders lightened, and the team stepped up, proving their competence and dedication. Yet even as things improved at the restaurant, my personal life remained a source of frustration. One night, I met Mark for drinks at a nearby bar. He had been my rock through all of this, but even he could see the strain I was under. "How's it going, man?" he asked, sliding a beer across the table to me. "Busy," I replied, taking a long sip. "The new place is coming together, but it's exhausting. I feel like I'm always on edge." Mark nodded sympathetically. "I get it. Expansion is tough. But you need to find some balance, or you're going to burn out." "I know," I admitted, "but it's not just the work, it's the loneliness. I thought I'd be able to handle it, but it's harder than I expected." "Have you thought about dating again?" he asked, his tone cautious. "I mean, really putting yourself out there." I shook my head. "Not really. I guess I'm still afraid. After Bella, it's hard to trust that someone would be interested in me, not just for the success and money." Mark leaned forward, his expression serious. "Sam, you can't let one bad experience define your future. There are good people out there. You just have to be willing to take the risk." "I know you're right," I said, feeling a pang of regret. "But it's easier said than done." "Maybe," he said, smiling slightly. "But you're a catch, Sam. Don't forget that." The conversation with Mark stayed with me. As the weeks went by, I tried to focus not just on the restaurant, but on finding some semblance of a personal life. I started going out more, meeting new people, and slowly opening myself up to the possibility of love again. One afternoon, while I was overseeing the final preparations for the new restaurant's opening, I received a call from my father. It was unexpected, and my heart raced as I answered. "Dad?" "Samuel," he said, his voice measured. "I hear the new restaurant is doing well." "It's getting there," I replied, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "Maybe I was too harsh before. You've accomplished a lot, and I'm proud of you." His words took me by surprise, and I struggled to find the right response. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. I want to support you, Samuel," he continued. In any way I can. Let's have dinner and talk about it. Okay, I said, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over me. I'd like that. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of hope. My father's approval had been something I longed for. And maybe now, we could find a way to reconcile our differences. The opening of the new Sam's Place was a resounding success. The restaurant was packed, the reviews were glowing, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. Yet, as I stood in the bustling dining room, watching the happy faces of our guests, I knew that the journey was far from over. Wealth and success had their price, but I was determined to find a way to balance my dreams with my personal life. With the support of my friends, family, and team, I believed that I could build not just a successful restaurant, but a fulfilling life as well. And maybe, just maybe, find someone who loved me for who I truly was. With the new Sam's Place thriving and my relationship with my father slowly mending, I felt a sense of stability. But amidst the success and growing fame of my restaurants, one thing remained a constant reminder of my unfinished business: my personal life. I had always envisioned a family, someone to share my successes and failures with. Enter Caroline. Caroline was a vision. She was beautiful, intelligent, and came from a prominent family. We met at a charity event, her laughter infectious, and her smile radiant. It wasn't long before we were seeing each other regularly. Our dates were filled with lively conversations, and I found myself drawn to her charm and wit. However, a nagging doubt lingered at the back of my mind. Was Caroline truly interested in me, or was she enamored with the successful restaurateur and son of a famous lawyer? One evening, after a particularly hectic day at the restaurant, Caroline and I decided to have dinner at a quiet bistro downtown. As we sat across from each other, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow, I decided to broach the subject that had been weighing heavily on my heart. Caroline, I began, hesitating as I searched for the right words. Can I ask you something? Of course, Sam, she replied, her eyes reflecting concern. What's on your mind? I've been thinking a lot about us, I said slowly. About what brought us together. I need to know. What is it that you see in me? She looked taken aback, her fork pausing midair. What do you mean? I see a wonderful, caring man who's passionate about his work. But is that all? I pressed, my voice betraying my anxiety. Sometimes I can't help but wonder if it's just the success, the restaurants, my family's name. I need to know if you love me for who I am, not just for what I represent. Caroline set her fork down, reaching across the table to take my hand. Sam, I understand why you feel this way. Given your past and the pressure you're under, it makes sense. But I'm here because I care about you. The real you. The one who's dedicated and hardworking, who cares deeply about making people happy with his food. Her words were sincere, and I wanted to believe them. But the doubt still gnawed at me. I appreciate that, Caroline. I really do. But I need time to be sure. I've been hurt before, and I don't want to go through that again. She squeezed my hand, her eyes softening. I understand, Sam. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Despite her reassurances, my doubts lingered. I needed a way to test her feelings, to see if she truly cared about me without the trappings of my success. It was a risky idea, but I decided to go through with it. A week later, I invited Caroline to a small, out-of-the-way restaurant. It was nothing like the upscale places we usually frequented. I wore simple, casual clothes, aiming to strip away the image of the successful restaurateur. Why are we here? Caroline asked, looking around curiously as we sat down. I wanted to take a break from all the fancy places, I explained. This spot has great food and a relaxed atmosphere. Sometimes it's nice to just enjoy something simple. She smiled, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. I guess it's a nice change. Throughout the evening, I watched her reactions closely. She was polite and engaged, but I could sense her discomfort. When the bill came, I made a point of splitting it, something we had never done before. As we left the restaurant, I decided to walk her back to her apartment. The conversation was strained, and I could tell she was puzzled by the evening's events. "Sam, what's going on?" she finally asked as we reached her building. "This doesn't feel like you." "I'm just trying to see things differently," I said. "I want to make sure we're not caught up in the superficial stuff." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. "I get that, Sam. But it feels like you're testing me. Do you really think I'm that shallow?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's not that. I've been burned before, Caroline. I need to be sure." She took a step back, her expression hurt. "I thought we were building something real. But if you can't trust me, then what's the point?" "I do trust you," I said quickly. "I just need time to work through this." She nodded slowly, her face sad but resolute. "Take your time, Sam, but know that I'm not going to wait forever." As she walked into her building, I felt a pang of regret. I wanted to believe in her, to trust her completely. But the fear of being used again was a barrier I couldn't easily overcome. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the turmoil in my personal life. The restaurants were doing well, and the new location was thriving. Yet, no matter how busy I was, thoughts of Caroline were never far from my mind. One night, as I was locking up the original Sam's Place, Maria approached me. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said, her voice full of concern. "Just dealing with some personal stuff," I admitted. "It's complicated." She sat down on one of the bar stools, motioning for me to join her. "Want to talk about it?" I hesitated but then nodded. "It's Caroline. I care about her, but I'm not sure if she's with me for the right reasons. I've been testing her, trying to see if she really loves me for who I am." Maria frowned. "Sam, relationships aren't about tests. They're about trust. If you keep doubting her, you'll drive her away. You need to decide if you're willing to take the risk and trust her, or let her go." Her words hit home, and I realized she was right. I had been so focused on protecting myself that I hadn't given Caroline a fair chance. "You're right, Maria. I need to trust her, but how do I get past this fear?" "Talk to her," Maria advised. "Be honest about your fears and let her in. It's the only way you'll know for sure." That night, I decided to follow Maria's advice. I called Caroline and asked if we could meet. She agreed, and we arranged to meet at a quiet cafe the next day. As we sat down, I took a deep breath, determined to lay everything on the table. "Caroline, I owe you an apology," I began. "I've been unfair to you, and I'm sorry." She looked at me, her expression wary but hopeful. "What do you mean?" "I've been testing you, trying to see if you're with me for the right reasons. But that's not how relationships work. I should have trusted you." She nodded slowly, her eyes softening. "I understand why you did it, Sam. But it hurt. I want to be with you for who you are, not for your success. But I need you to trust me too." "I do," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "And I'm willing to work on this, to build something real with you. No more tests. Just us." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made my heart soar. "I'm willing to work on it too, Sam. Let's take this one step at a time." As we left the cafe, hand in hand, I felt a sense of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to take the risk. Caroline and I had a long way to go, but for the first time, I felt confident that we could face the challenges together. The weeks following my heartfelt conversation with Caroline were some of the most hopeful and joyful I had experienced in a long time. We continued to grow closer, spending more time together and sharing our dreams and fears. The doubts that had plagued me seemed to be dissolving, replaced by a burgeoning trust and genuine affection. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Caroline and I decided to take a break from the city and head out to a vineyard just outside town. The lush green vines and the warm breeze provided a perfect escape from our hectic lives. As we strolled through the rows of grapevines, our hands intertwined, I felt a deep sense of peace. "Sam, Have you ever thought about where you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Caroline asked, her eyes reflecting the sunlight as she looked up at me. I smiled, considering her question. Honestly, I see myself continuing to grow the restaurant business, maybe even expanding into new cities or starting a culinary school. And I paused, squeezing her hand gently. I see myself with a family. With you, hopefully. She blushed, her smile widening. That sounds like a wonderful future. I've always wanted a family too. And I'd love to be part of your dreams. Our conversation continued as we sampled different wines and enjoyed the picturesque scenery. It felt like we were building a future together, one conversation at a time. However, as the day turned into evening and we headed back to the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I still needed to address. The fear that had lingered in my heart for so long wasn't entirely gone. One evening, a few days later, I decided it was time to take the next step in our relationship. I invited Caroline over for dinner at my place, planning to make her favorite dish, lobster risotto. As we sat down to eat, the atmosphere was warm and intimate, yet I felt a sense of nervous anticipation. Caroline, there's something I need to talk to you about. I began, setting my fork down and looking into her eyes. She looked at me curiously. What is it, Sam? I took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about our future and about trust. I know I've had doubts in the past, and I want to be completely honest with you. There's something you need to know about why I've been so cautious. Her expression turned serious as she leaned in, giving me her full attention. Go on. It all goes back to my time in law school, I explained. There was a girl, Bella. I thought she was the one. We were so close, and I was ready to spend my life with her. But then I found out she was only interested in me because of my family's wealth and status. It broke me, Caroline. It's taken me a long time to even consider trusting someone again. Caroline reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Sam, I'm so sorry you went through that. I can't imagine how painful it must have been. It was, I admitted, feeling a lump in my throat, but I need you to know that I'm trying to move past it. I want to trust you completely. I want us to have a future together, without any shadows from my past. She nodded, her eyes filled with compassion. Thank you for telling me, Sam. It means a lot that you trust me enough to share this. I promise you, I'm here for you. Not for your money or your status, but for you. For the man who loves food, who cares deeply about his work and the people in his life. Her words were like a balm to my soul, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I believe you, Caroline, and I want to make this work. I'm ready to leave the past behind and focus on us. As we finished our dinner, the conversation flowed easily, and the sense of closeness between us grew. It felt like we had crossed a significant hurdle, one that had been holding me back for far too long. A few weeks later, Caroline and I attended a gala event together. It was a charity fundraiser, filled with the city's elite. As we mingled with the crowd, I couldn't help but feel proud to have her by my side. She handled herself with grace and charm, effortlessly engaging with everyone she met. At one point during the evening, I found myself in a conversation with Richard, my business partner, and his wife, Emily. Caroline was chatting with a group of people nearby when Richard leaned in and whispered, "You seem happy, Sam. Caroline's a great catch." "Thanks, Richard," I replied, smiling. I feel like I'm finally moving in the right direction. As the evening progressed, I noticed Caroline speaking with a man I didn't recognize. He seemed overly familiar, and I felt a pang of jealousy. I decided to approach them, wanting to ensure everything was all right. "Hey, Caroline," I said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Who's your friend?" "Oh, Sam," she said, smiling up at me. "This is David, an old friend from college. We were just catching up." David extended his hand, and I shook it, trying to suppress my unease. "Nice to meet you, David." "Likewise," he replied, his smile a bit too friendly. "Caroline was just telling me about your restaurants. Impressive work you've done, Sam. Thanks, I said, feeling a hint of suspicion. Caroline, could I steal you away for a moment? Of course, she said, excusing herself from the conversation with David. As we walked away, I turned to her. Is everything all right with that guy? She looked at me, her brow furrowing. Yeah. Why? I don't know. He seemed a bit off, I admitted, feeling a bit foolish. Caroline laughed softly. He's harmless, Sam. Just an old friend. You have nothing to worry about. I nodded, trying to shake off the lingering doubts. Okay, I trust you. As the gala continued, I couldn't help but keep an eye on David. Something about him didn't sit right with me, but I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on enjoying the evening with Caroline. Later that night, as we drove back to my place, I decided to address my concerns directly. Caroline, David, are you sure there's nothing there? She looked at me, her expression serious. Sam, I promise you, there's nothing. He's just a friend. I'm with you, and I want to build a future with you. Her reassurances helped, but I couldn't completely shake the feeling of unease. As we pulled up to my place, I decided to let it go for now. Trust was something I needed to work on, and Caroline had done nothing to betray that trust. Over the next few days, I threw myself back into work, focusing on the upcoming launch of a new seasonal menu at Sam's Place. Caroline was supportive, offering her insights and even helping with some of the marketing plans. Our relationship continued to grow, and I felt more certain than ever that she was the one. One evening, as we were having dinner at my place, Caroline brought up a topic that took me by surprise. Sam, have you ever thought about expanding internationally? I looked at her, intrigued. I have actually. It's a big step, but I think it could be an exciting challenge. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. I've been doing some research, and I think there are some great opportunities abroad. We could look into it together. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself considering the possibilities. That sounds amazing, Caroline. Let's do it. As we discussed potential locations and ideas, I felt a renewed sense of excitement. The future seemed bright, filled with promise and new adventures. And with Caroline by my side, I believed anything was possible. However, as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't completely shake the feeling that there was something I was missing. David's presence at the gala had planted a seed of doubt that continued to grow. I decided it was time to confront it head-on. One evening, as Caroline and I were enjoying a quiet dinner, I brought up the subject again. Caroline, can we talk about David? She looked at me, her expression puzzled. What about him? I don't know. Something about him doesn't sit right with me, I admitted. I trust you, but I can't help but feel there's something I'm missing. She sighed, setting her fork down. Sam, I told you, he's just a friend. There's nothing more to it. I believe you, I said quickly, but I need to know more about your past with him. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just, I need to understand. She nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. All right. David and I dated briefly in college, but it didn't work out. We stayed friends, and that's all there is to it. I haven't seen him in years until the gala. Her honesty helped alleviate some of my concerns, but I still felt uneasy. Thank you for telling me, Caroline. I just needed to know. She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Sam, I'm with you now. The past is the past. Let's focus on our future. I nodded, squeezing her hand. You're right. Our future is what matters. As we finished our dinner, I felt a sense of resolution. Caroline had been honest with me, and I needed to trust her.